Good evening and welcome to our live coverage of European Commission's Galileo L13 mission launch from Space Coast. That is from the pad Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We hope you all are doing fine and excited about this upcoming Galileo launch. We are super excited bringing you the live coverage of the SpaceX 93rd overall launch and the 90th Falcon 9 launch of this year. Hello, my name is Dipto Moitra, performing the commentary for today's mission launch. Before moving to the mission details, firstly, on behalf of AstroYonder team, we express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone for joining us live and being a part of today's launch. We really appreciate you being here. A big thanks to our amazing YouTube community for being here today as we provide detailed coverage of space launches, complete with extensive statistics and thorough insights. We are awaiting for a Falcon 9 liftoff at 6:50 p.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral for a northeasterly launch for SpaceX Galileo L13 mission launch. The Galileo L13 mission will launch two full operational capability, short for FOC Galileo satellites numbered FM26 and FM32 to medium Earth orbit. Today's mission marks SpaceX's amazing 385th overall launch with the 373rd Falcon 9 launch to date. Today's launch is a special one. This will be the second out of two dedicated Galileo launches aboard Falcon 9 of this year for SpaceX and from US soil. Unlike last time, back on April 28th on Galileo L12 mission, where the Falcon 9 first stage booster with tail number 1060 was expended, this time SpaceX will attempt to recover the booster for this mission with such flight profile. Prior to today's launch, on April 28th, SpaceX has launched Galileo L12 mission on SpaceX's 42nd mission of the year and 337th overall mission from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center, deploying first pair of Galileo FOC satellites out of the two planned launches by SpaceX. And today is the second one. SpaceX is currently targeting a liftoff time of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 6:50 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 10:50 p.m. UTC on Tuesday, September 17th. Before moving on, would like to welcome Confession at 3 a.m., one of our moderator here. Thanks for joining us. Hope you will be enjoying the stream. Although it's late at your place, still you came to visit us. For that we are thankful to you. Also would like to welcome Marcos Antonio for joining us. Marcos is coming to our streams nowadays very frequently. Now let's take a look at today's payload details for Galileo L13 mission. This launch marks the second dedicated European Commission's Galileo satellite launch for this year and for SpaceX as well. Well, just a bit of update. Earlier this month, on September 5th, the European Union, that is EUSPA, confirmed that the Galileo L13 satellites completed on-orbit commissioning and officially joined the constellation. Galileo FOC satellites are built by OHB in Bremen, Germany, with the contribution of Surrey Satellite Technology in Guildford, United Kingdom. The Galileo satellites are managed and operated by European Union Agency for Space Program, that is EUSPA, on behalf of European Union or Commission. Today's launch consists of two full operational capability satellites. This will be the 31st and 32nd satellites launched to be part of the operational constellation. Each Galileo full operational capability satellite is equipped with one L-band main antenna, one C-band antenna, two S-band antennas, and a SAR, that is search and rescue antenna. We will provide you a visual representation of this, so don't worry about that. Each satellite features deployed solar arrays, a span of 13 meters, which generate 1.9 kilowatt of power. Also, it has a high capacity battery to store and provide power to the payloads. Each Galileo satellite contains a passive hydrogen maser, short for PHM clock, which is the master clock on board the spacecraft. It is an atomic clock which uses the ultra-stable 1.4 GHz transition in a hydrogen atom to measure time to within 0.45 nanosecond over 12 hours. So you can just imagine how precise its navigation system will be. Also, the satellite has a rubidium atomic frequency standard, short for RAFS clock, which will be used if the Messier clock fails. And this RAFS clock is accurate to within 1.8 nanosecond over 12 hours. Again, setting an example of precision. Now, speaking of sensors, each satellite has infrared Earth sensors and the sun sensors. Both help to keep the spacecraft pointing at the Earth. Each Galileo satellite weighs about 700 kilograms with launch mass of nearly 732.8 kilograms. The Galileo satellites are placed in the medium Earth orbit, a circular orbit with an altitude of 23,222 kilometers with an orbital inclination of 56 degrees. Now let's take a look at the pictorial representation of the satellite components for better understanding. Well, let me just put that channel logo to hide. Now on your screen you can see the satellite components of the Galileo. So here you will notice the L band, which is the main antenna which transmits the navigation signals in 1200 to 1600 megahertz frequency range, which utilizes three bands, that is E5, E6 and E1. The C-band antenna receives main data from Galileo uplink stations, including one onboard clock synchronization and satellite integrity data, which is then incorporated into the navigation signals for users. Two S-band antennas, part of the telemetry, tracking and command subsystem, transmit payload and spacecraft data to ground control and receive commands to operate the payload. The search and rescue antenna picks up distress signals from beacons on Earth and transmit them to a ground station for forwarding to local rescue services. It consists of UHF receiver operating at 406 MHz and L-band receiver operating at 1544 MHz frequency. Now the sensors. The infrared Earth sensor and sun sensors help keep the spacecraft pointed at Earth. The Earth sensor detects the contrast between deep space cold and Earth's atmospheric heat, while sun sensors, the visible light detectors, which measures angles between their base and the incident sunlight. Then we have the laser retroreflector, which allows the measurements of the satellite's altitude to within a few centimeters by reflecting a laser beam transmitted by a ground station. The laser retroreflector is used only about once a year, as altitude measurements via S-band antenna ranging signals are otherwise accurate enough. There are space radiators that radiate waste heat produced by the units inside the spacecraft to deep space, and thus helps to keep the units within their operational temperature range. Apart from the interior service module, which consists of SADM, a drive mechanism for the solar panels, gyroscopes, reaction wheels, magnetobar, power conditioning distribution unit, environmental monitoring unit, and the onboard computer. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, that Galileo's global navigation sensor system provides civilian control positioning services worldwide. Galileo constellation provides the world's most accurate positioning system, and it serves over 4 billion users. Now let's take a look at the flight record for the booster supporting today's Galileo L13 mission. Quite a mature booster with tail number 1067 will be supporting today's mission, reaching its 22nd flight. Today's supporting booster with tail number 1067 has previous 21 flights in its record, including missions like CRS-22, a commercial resupply services to the ISS, SpaceX Crew 3, which was the maiden flight for Crew Dragon Endurance, Turksat 5B for Turkey, developed for military and commercial purposes. Again, another SpaceX Crew 4, Dragon's fourth NASA commercial operational flight. Then we have another commercial resupply services to the ISS, that is the CRS-25 mission. Next, Eutelsat Hotbird 13G. Hotbird is a group of satellites operated by Eutelsat, which is a French satellite operator. Next mission supported by this booster was mPOWER-A, a communication satellite system owned and operated by SES, a major telecommunications operator based in Luxembourg. Next mission supported was PSN Satria for Pacific Satellite Nusantara, short of PSN, which is a private Indonesian satellite telecommunication company. And the last non-Starlink mission supported by this booster was the Telkomsat Merah Putih 2 for Telkomsat, which is again an Indonesian multinational telecommunication company. Additionally, the booster also supported 12 Starlink missions. The booster made its debut with the CRS-22 mission from Kennedy Space Center on June 3rd, back in 2021. So it is evident how mature this booster is, with an age of 3 years, 3 months and 2 weeks as of now. The last mission supported by today's booster was the Starlink Group 8-3 from here only at Cape on 10th of August this year. It's now 38 days since last use, now awaiting its 22nd flight, just minutes away. Also, some fun facts: today's boost mission will be the 22nd consecutive launch of this booster from East Coast, with all launches from Pad 39A and Space Launch Complex 40. But one interesting thing to remind you, that on the debut flight with the CRS-22 mission from Kennedy Space Center, this booster made its landing on, of course, a still drone ship located in Atlantic Ocean. Now a request for you guys. As you can see, we strive hard to provide in-depth details and thorough information. Hitting the like button helps YouTube's algorithm catch on and bring more space fans and rocket lovers our way, helping us to build a community with amazing space enthusiasts like you. Also considering subscribing to us, we would be thrilled to have you on board. Your support means the world to us, with that, it inspires us to work even harder to deliver live coverages filled with stats and insights. Now let's have a look at the bar graphs presenting number of Falcon 9 launches each year. Before today's launch, SpaceX completed 89 successful launches of the Falcon 9, with the recent Starlink 9-6 mission launch back on September 12th. That launch marked the 20th successful launch since the Starlink 9-3 mission failure. And also with that launch, SpaceX have 28 more than the launches made in 2022. Now with today's launch of Galileo L13 mission, the bar graph shows 90 successful Falcon 9 launches so far this year, which is 29 more than the launches made in 2022. They have already done more than half as many launches as they did all of last year, and it's only been 8 months and 17 days of this year. Just 6 more launches and SpaceX will be reaching the same number of launches made in last year, as SpaceX stays on course to achieve its ambitious target of 140 to 148 launches by this year's end. And if we count the failed Starlink 9-3 mission, SpaceX will have today 91 launches, which is just 5 less than the number of launches made in last year. Would like to thank our moderator here for striving hard to convince people to talk here on chat. Also, we wish that you guys will be sharing your experience over the chat. That will let us to know each other and to build a community. As always, we lay emphasis on that. Now let's go ahead as we progress through the countdown and review the milestones that lie ahead for us on this Cape Canaveral flight. Here is a pre-launch timeline, which is a general for Falcon 9 liftoff. Just a thing here I would like to mention, that you might be knowing that the strong back reclining process here at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center differs from that at Vandenberg. Here at Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center, we recline the strong back about 1.5 degrees, whereas at Vandenberg, we recline it 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9. And here is an image on your screen showing how a strong back or the transporter erector transport rockets. The transporter erector positioned alongside the vehicle, also referred as a transporter erector, fulfills multiple functions. It supplies propellants, provide air conditioning, pressurization gases, and electrical power. Although on your screen you are watching Falcon Heavy being transported, but the process is very similar for the Falcon 9. So would like to just skip today for the pre-launch timeline to discuss, because basically it's the same for most of the Falcon 9 launches with no changes being here. Would like to discuss the post-launch timeline because there is an interesting thing there. We'll just come up on that. Would like to welcome JP joining us here on live. Thanks JP for joining us and being vocal on the chat. Hope you will be liking the stream and we will be meeting your expectations. Now enjoy the stream as we move ahead with our discussion here. Now let's go ahead and briefly step through the trajectory for today's the Galileo mission. So the Falcon 9 leaving the pad for Space Launch Complex 40 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station with a batch of 2 full operational capability Galileo satellites on board for a northeast trajectory heading into medium Earth orbit, that is to the one of the 3 orbital planes for first generation Galileo constellation, indicated by that green line on your screen. The red line you see, it indicates where the Falcon 9 first stage will land after stage separation, just a little later leaving Florida Space Coast. This is going to be a drone ship landing using autonomous spaceport drone ship. For today, it's just read the instructions drone ship, one of the 2 here on the East Coast, which means that the first stage with tail number 1067 flying for its 22nd time will be returning, heading out to the drone ship for landing. This will be the 92nd landing on just read the instructions to date. The planned booster recovery is approximately 670 kilometers with estimated fairing recovery approximately 860 kilometers downrange. And the stage 2 debris re-entry will be in the south of Australia. Currently there are 3 in SpaceX drone ship fleet. One of the 3 drone ships, just read the instructions, and a short follow-up Gravitas are stationed here in Florida, while of course I Still Love You is stationed in California. We are expecting the addition of a 4th drone ship, likely by the end of this year or early next year. Meanwhile, we got some glimpses of Blue Origin's Jacqueline, which reached the port Canaveral some days before only. Now SpaceX will utilize the recovery vessel Doug for today to retrieve the fairing halves from the Atlantic waters, with 2 halves of the payload fairing which will be recovered slightly farther, approximately 190 kilometers downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. After they will smoothly splash down with the guidance of parachutes. You can see on your screen how a fairing recovery operation looks like. The recovery vessel on your screen is Doug, and today's supporting recovery vessel is Doug itself. Other recovery vessel Bob and Go Cosmos here at the East Coast is currently awaiting its next assignment. These are some of the images of the recovery operations carried out for the payload fairings after they splashed down. Now here is a short video of the fairing half. You know, that protective shell from rocket's payload getting apart and exposing the payload to the vacuum of space with the MBAC ignition of the second stage. Hopefully you like this short clip. Now here is the interesting thing for today, as today's flight profile. So let me just break it down for you. At t plus 1 minute and 11 seconds, Falcon 9 will pass through max Q. Then couple of different events coming up in rapid succession. First will be MECO at t plus 2 minutes and 31 seconds, followed by another major milestone within 3 seconds at t plus 2 minutes and 34 seconds, where stage separation will occur. Just after 7 seconds later, second stage MVAC engine will ignite for the first time during today's flight, also known as SES-1, at t plus 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Coming up next at 3 minutes and 24 seconds mark, Falcon 9's payload fairings will be jettisoned, exposing the payload to the vacuum of space. At t plus 6 minutes and 20 seconds, the first stage entry burn will begin, lasting for 18 seconds, up to 6 minutes and 38 seconds mark, ending the entry burn for the Falcon 9's first stage. Next major milestone at t plus 8 minutes and 13 seconds, the first stage landing burn will commence, which will orient and set up the first stage for SpaceX iconic precision landing. The second stage MVAC engine will shut down, that is SECO-1, for the first time in today's flight, and enter into a parking orbit at t plus 8 minutes and 27 seconds. At t plus 8 minutes and 34 seconds, the first stage will land on drone ship. Just read the instructions. 92nd time for this drone ship, marking SpaceX 349th overall booster landing to date. Now from here, the flight profile is having a twist, that at t plus 3 hours and 26 minutes and 52 seconds, the second stage MVAC engine will reignite for a long 29-second burn, that is SES-2, and turning it off at t plus 3 hours, 27 minutes and 21 seconds, also known as SECO-2, which will set up the batch of 2 full operational capability Galileo satellites deployment at approximately 3 hours, 34 minutes and 22 seconds. So I'm pretty sure, just like the previous Galileo L13 mission, we will be not having any visuals after the landing will happen. So be mentally prepared about that. Just I mentioned it. Now we have an update that SpaceX has adjusted the liftoff time, I guess, but although it's not reflecting on their website, but it is, the time got changed on their webcast. So let's see. Although we know that today we have 40% favorable outlook for launch and 60% probability of violation, with primary concerns being surface electric field rule, cumulus cloud rule, and anvil cloud rules. Also the weather update provided by the 45th Weather Squadron, they mentioned that the booster recovery weather will be having a risk of a moderate level on a scale of low to high. Also, there will be some scattered shower. So let's see and hope that they will be able to launch on time and not have to push too far. But if for some reason we won't be having a launch today, there is a backup opportunity tomorrow, that is on Wednesday, September 18 at 6:46 p.m. Eastern Time, which corresponds to 10:46 p.m. UTC. Now let's just quickly jump into the stats as we are nearing to the webcast to begin. Today's launch marks the 385th SpaceX overall launch and the second dedicated launch of European Commission's Galileo satellites for this year. This marks the 373rd Falcon 9 launch to date. The 22nd flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster supporting today's mission with tail number 1067. Today's launch marks 90th successful Falcon 9 launch of 2024 so far, but it will be the 91st Falcon 9 launch if we consider the one failed Starlink mission. And this will be the SpaceX's 93rd overall launch of this year, including the third and fourth integrated flight test of Starship and one Falcon Heavy launch. This is SpaceX's 318th Falcon booster reflight to date, meaning the launch of a booster that has flown at least once before. 206th orbital launch for SpaceX, launching from Space Launch Complex 40, and the 261st overall orbital launch from this pad. With the success of this mission, SpaceX will have a 4 dedicated full operational capability Galileo satellites launch to date. Now moving on to some reusability statistics. This launch marks 304th Falcon 9 booster reflight to date. 92nd landing on Just Read the Instructions drone ship. 22nd landing of the first stage booster with tail number 1067. And with this mission's first stage landing, which brings the milestones of 274th overall drone ship landing, marking 330th Falcon 9 landing and 349th SpaceX's overall landing to date. Speaking of drone ship landing, on your screen here are some stats prior to today's launch. Thanks JP for being awake and watching it at midnight. One of our friend from Spain. Thanks for tuning in JP. We are really happy that you joined us here. Now let's have a look into some key stats for SpaceX launches in this year, including today's Galileo L13 mission. With today's mission launch, SpaceX is having a total of 93 launches this year, and out of those, 62 are Starlink missions, counting one failed mission here. 29 non-Starlink missions, including today's launch for commercial and government organizations, which also includes the 10th Falcon Heavy launch. Additionally, 2 Starship launches we had for SpaceX. Now, SpaceX reused booster for 87 times in these mission launches, including today's mission, showing their commitment to sustainability and reusability. If we look into the geographical distribution, they have 61 launches from East Coast in Florida, with 17 from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center, and 44 launches, including today's one, from Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. On the West Coast, they have 30 launches, all from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And there were 2 launches from Gulf Coast at Starbase back in Texas for Starship 3rd and 4th integrated flight test. And now we are waiting for the 5th integrated flight test, which is purely uncertain, as we know the issues going on with the FAA and SpaceX. Hopefully we will be getting to witness the flight sooner, but the rumors we are having that maybe until November we won't be having the 5th integrated flight test, but it's just a rumor. We don't have any official confirmation, but as we know that SpaceX did mention in a strict words criticizing how FAA is taking time to give them the approval. So maybe it can be true or maybe not. Anyways, so as for landings, they will be nailing it today 90 times this year. Most of the landings are on drone ships with 71 successful landings, 25 on Of Course I Still Love You, 21 on Just Read the Instructions, including one from today, and 25 on A Short Fall of Gravitas. And for ground landings, they have pulled off 19 of them, 12 times on landing zone 1, previously with the Bluebird 1-5 mission recently, 2 times on landing zone 2, and 5 times on landing zone 4 with the recent Transporter 11 mission. Now, prior to today's launch, the success rate for the ground landings is 98.68%, with 75 successful landings to date. For drone ship, it is 96.13% with 273 successful landings. And the overall landing success rate for all these years from when SpaceX is operating is 96.67%, with overall 348 successful landings. With today, we will be having the 349th landing. The landing success rate for this year got reduced from 100% to 98.88%, as we know, due to the failure of the booster with tail number 1062 to land on the drone ship is shortfall of Gravitas drone ship during the Starlink 8-6 mission. Today's mission is the 21st launch since the last mission failure, that is the Starlink 9-3 mission. I guess there is 2 more minutes to go from the webcast to begin. So let's just wrap up with these stats we are having here. Right now on your screen, you are having a pie chart showing the orbital launches this year, including today's one. United States dominating with 106 orbital launches, a substantial 62.7% of the global total. And this also includes the Rocket Lab launches, as Rocket Lab is an USA based company. Now China follows closely behind, accounting for 23.7% with 40 launches. Russia maintains a steady pace with 11 launches, with a recent Angara 1.2 launch of Russian military satellites of undisclosed identity on September 17th, that is today, which makes 6.5% of the pie. On the other hand, Japan has 4 launches so far, making 2.4% of the pie. India and Iran entered the fray with 3 launches each, both having 1.8% of the pie respectively. Lastly, Europe is also having their share of the pie with 1.2%, with 2 launches so far. As we can see that China and USA are the lead this year in the rocket launches. So I guess the webcast has begun. Just hold on, we are making the stream live.
Falcon 9 is set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, just over 9.5 minutes from now. My name is Ronnie Foreman, and I'm a Senior Sales Manager here at SpaceX. Today's mission is an exciting one. Not only is this mission expected to be our 385th operational mission to date and 90th of 2024, this will also be the 22nd flight of the Falcon 9 booster supporting today's launch. We'll be ending the webcast tonight after booster landing at the request of our customer, so keep an eye on X for confirmation of payload deploy. Unlike the previous Galileo mission, which SpaceX launched in April of this year, today we will be attempting to recover the Falcon 9 booster on your screen. Tonight we'll be using our drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now, as the countdown ticks on, let's take a moment to meet the vehicle and learn a little bit more about what makes Falcon 9, and this booster in particular, so unique. Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket that is designed and manufactured by SpaceX for the reliable and safe transport of people and payloads into Earth orbit and beyond. It is also the most flown U.S. launch vehicle ever. It is also the first and currently the only orbital class rocket capable of reflight. The entire rocket stands about 229 feet tall, which is roughly the height of a 21-story building. The bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is the first stage, also referred to as the booster. Not only is the first stage the largest part of the rocket, it's also the portion of the vehicle that we attempt to land for future reuse. Rapid and reliable reusability is key to making life multiplanetary, and every launch is an opportunity for us to learn and inform future missions. To that end, we're working to qualify our fleet of Falcon 9 boosters and fairings to support 40 missions each. During the Galileo L13 mission earlier this year, the Falcon 9 booster was expended, which is just another way to say that it was not recovered. This was done so that the Falcon 9 booster could provide the additional performance needed to deliver the payload to a higher energy orbit. While the booster for Galileo L12 was expended, the data from that mission was still used to help inform changes that will allow us to safely recover and reuse the booster for today's launch. Today's re-entry trajectory will result in higher heating and dynamic pressure on the booster than many of our previous landings. Although the re-entry conditions are on the higher end of past missions, they're still acceptable for flight. And since it's not often that we have a landing attempt that tests the bounds of recovery, this is an extremely valuable opportunity for us to gather actual in-flight data on how the rocket performs in elevated entry conditions. What we learn today will help us innovate on future vehicles. There's the call out from Mission Control that engine trill has begun. What we learned today will help us innovate on future vehicle designs to make our rockets more robust and rapidly reusable, while expanding into more and more challenging re-entry conditions. Now turning our attention back to the pad, above the first stage is our second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine on board that ignites after the first stage separates. This second stage is what will carry today's Galileo payloads to orbit. And located above the second stage is the payload fairing. At 17 feet,
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
Call out for RP1 completion on board our first stage there. And great views of our 17-foot diameter payload fairing on your screen. That fairing is made of carbon composite material that protects the payload on its way to orbit. It will be jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight. The fairing halves supporting today's mission are both also flight proven, although with not quite as high of a flight count as our booster. One fairing half is flying for its 8th time and the other for its 3rd. After separating from the second stage, both fairing halves will return to Earth and be recovered by our recovery vessel, Doug. With that, we are just over 5.5 minutes away from liftoff, and at this point in the countdown, we're waiting for those clamp arms around the base of stage 2 to begin opening up beneath the fairing, and for the TE, which you may also hear called out as the transporter erector or the strongback, to begin pulling away from the rocket in preparation for liftoff.
Well, just a reminder, those of you watched the Galileo L12 mission previously, back on April 27th from Kennedy Space Center, where the booster was expended. There we saw there was no landing legs for that Falcon 9 booster as it was supposed to be expended, but this time it's just an same Falcon 9 booster configuration other than flight profile. Those are changed this time because as you heard just now, Ronnie, that they from the previous flight they gathered the data to modify the Falcon 9 flight profile this time so that they can land the booster. But today it's just like any other mission launch where the landing is supposed to happen. The payload the landing legs are there. So as right now you are watching that the payload, that clamp arms underneath the payload fairings are opening up. Now we will start reclining the strong back or the transporter erector about 1.5 degrees. At this point, the Falcon 9 prop load for the RP1 is complete. So right now we are still loading the LOX load both on the stage 1 and stage 2.
Then just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage will light in preparation for liftoff. With just over 3 minutes to go, the vehicle continues to be healthy and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
There's confirmation of LOX load complete on board the first stage. Now, on board Falcon 9 tonight, there are 2 Galileo satellites, which we should have a view of here in just a second. Galileo is a flagship program for the European Union and one of several global navigation satellite systems, together with the United States GPS, Russia's GLONASS, and China's Beidou systems. There is that photo of those 2 Galileo spacecraft. This photo was taken earlier this week during encapsulation. The Galileo program currently consists of more than 30 spacecraft that serve approximately 4 billion users. Galileo's open service began in 2017 and provides meter-level accuracy for end users, while the system's high-accuracy service provides sub-meter level accuracy. Each Galileo satellite weighs approximately 700 kilograms and contains 2 payloads, one for navigation and another for search and rescue. Each spacecraft also has 4 atomic clocks that are accurate to within a nanosecond. Tonight's Galileo L13 mission is Falcon 9's second launch supporting the Galileo program.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete right now. We got the call out. Right now, all propellants are on board the Falcon 9 with 1 million pounds of propellant. Now, we are beginning to vent down the pressure that was in the tubing on the strong back. And also we are having the ground gas closeout call out where we bleed the pressure off, and that cold gas, when it reacts with the moist humid air, which gives you that nice white cloud. Now coming at T-minus 41 minute, Falcon 9 should be in startup mode.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Right on time. Computers on both the stages are running the rocket through the last minute of count. Now let's listen to the go call out from the launch.
Right on schedule. So with that, all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 and Galileo L13.
We got a go from the SpaceX launch director.
30 seconds.
Right now we are less than T-minus 30 seconds.
$15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff of Galileo L13. Go SpaceX, go Falcon.
And there we have it. Falcon 9 has lifted off.
Stage 1 propulsion is
A
nominal.
successful liftoff, clearing the tower. T plus 25 seconds. We got a call out that Pluto is pitching down range.
These beautiful tracking views, of course, mean that Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral, and the vehicle is throttling down its first stage engines as it prepares for max Q, about 1 minute and 10 seconds into flight.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Good call outs. Power and telemetry are nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
And confirmation that Falcon 9 is moving faster than the speed of sound.
Right now we crossed Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
Because this is the moment in flight with the highest amount of aerodynamic pressure.
Max Q.
And with that confirmation, we have 3 events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, stage separation, and then second engine start 1.
Now we are expecting a call out for MVAC engine chill prior to its ignition on the second stage. As you heard, coming up we have 3 events in rapid succession: the shutdown of main engine on first stage, that is main engine cutoff, also known as MECO, followed by stage separation and ignition of the second stage MVAC engine for the first time, a event named SES1, which will boost the payload into medium Earth orbit. So let's hear the call outs. Amazing views we are getting today. Now upon stage separation, the nitrogen thrusters will begin to reorient the first stage, and the 4 hypersonic titanium grid fins will
Main
start
engine
to
cutoff.
deploy.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
So there we have confirmation of main engine cutoff, stage separation, and SES1.
Now here you can see on the left side of your screen that the hypersonic grid fins starting to deploy. Now coming up at 3 minutes and 24 seconds, we will be having the fairing separation. So let's hear the call out for that.
While we stand by for fairing separation, we do have great views on your screen right here.
Nominal trajectories.
And confirmation of nominal trajectories for both vehicles.
Really on the left side of your screen you can still, I hope you could see that
Fairing separation confirmed.
Great view and audio there from mission control of fairing separation. Now from here on out, our 2 stages are following different trajectories. As the first stage prepares for its landing attempt on our drone ship, just read the instructions, and the second stage continues taking the Galileo payloads to orbit.
Amazing views from the first stage. Right now it's preparing for its landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Second stage, meanwhile, in the middle of its 6-minute burn, is on its way into the parking orbit with the Galileo satellite payload on board. So far the launch has gone flawless. The first stage has completed its job and making its way back. The second stage is performing at full capacity, providing us good telemetry for today and trajectory. We are getting good views from the stunning views from space from the first stage. As heard before, that on request of the customer, SpaceX is not broadcasting the views from the second stage. Now at this phase of the flight, stage 1 uses only its grid fins for steering as it returns to Earth. The grid fins helps orient the Falcon 9 during re-entry and guide its descent. While we are currently viewing the first stage, you may occasionally see bursts of nitrogen gas from the first stage for altitude control. This burst helps position the vehicle as it heads back to the drone ship. Stage next, we are waiting for the call out for stage 1 entry burn startup, where we'll be letting 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, which will rapidly slow down the vehicle as it enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Nominal trajectories.
And confirmation that both vehicles are still on nominal trajectories. To start the upcoming entry burn, we'll relight 3 of the M1D engines on board the first stage.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Right on schedule.
Stage 1 FTSO saved.
So there we go. There's confirmation of the entry burn startup. Now coming up, this burn will last just around 18 seconds. Also, we heard a call out that stage 1 FTS has been saved, which means that the re-entry burn for the stage 1 has been accomplished. Now the Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs, and those legs are made out of carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb. They are placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket, and they will deploy just prior to the landing. Also, it is worth mentioning that the stage 2 FTS has been saved. This call out means that it means orbital insertion burn is complete. Coming up, we are expecting a call out for stage 1 being transonic. It means that the stage
reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investment in critical space infrastructure. The Falcon 9 first stage supporting today's mission has now performed its entry burn for the 22nd time.
Stage 1 transonic.
So this call out means that stage 1 is now traveling slower than the speed of sound as it heads back towards the landing. Speaking of landing, we are just about less than 60 seconds away from that. Landing burn on the stage 1 should be starting.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There we go. Landing burn had started with center E9 engine now lit. We are slowing down the vehicle very rapidly. Should be having two landing legs being deployed, and there we go.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And confirmation of first stage landing. This was the 22nd launch and landing for this first stage. This landing marks SpaceX's 349th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, insertion, and confirmation of nominal orbital insertion by our second stage.
You can see the crowd.
Now with those confirmations, we are going to bring today's webcast to a close. The second stage still has another burn coming up just over 3 hours and 26 minutes into today's mission to finalize the orbit for deployment of the Galileo spacecraft. Be sure to keep an eye on our X account for confirmation of payload deploy and our customer's website to learn more about today's mission. If you're interested in even more launch coverage, be sure to check spacex.com/launches for the most up-to-date information. Today's mission marked SpaceX's 385th operational mission to date and 90th this year. This was, again, the 22nd launch for this Falcon 9 first stage booster and our 349th landing. A big thank you to our customer for this mission, the European Commission, and also to the Eastern Range and Coast Guard for their continued support. And of course, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Now, with that, we will wrap up our coverage. Just for a quick reminder, upon having the SECO-1, that is the MVAC shutdown, the payload entered into about 3 hours and 18 minutes of coast phase as the vehicle ascends to its target orbit. And we got the call outs. We were waiting for second stage engine cutoff SECO-1, followed by stage 1 successful landing and the confirmation of a good nominal orbit. Today's launch marks SpaceX's 385th successful launch, with the landing marking their 349th success. And with that, we will wrap up our coverage for now. Be sure to check out our social media handle on X for the latest happenings in the space industry and updates on upcoming launches. Hope you enjoyed the stream. We appreciate everyone joining us for today's launch. Wishing everyone a great week ahead. Thanks to our moderator here, Confusion at 3 a.m., Simon Haga, JP and Marcos Antonio for tuning in, and rest all others who didn't showed up on the chat. So this is AstroYonder Live and me Dipto signing off for now, and we will see you next time.